Should I sell the Red Komodo for the Blackmagic Cinema Camera 6K that we're actually filming on right now, as I bought it to be my studio camera? And the more I use it, the more I question whether it's going to end up just being my studio camera. Now, this is going to be a little bit different from a lot of the videos you've seen out there where a lot of people are making claims, oh, I'm selling my Red for a Blackmagic, blah, blah, blah. This isn't necessarily it. I haven't been sold on my decision, but I'm going to talk a lot about my situation. I'm going to talk a little bit about specs and cameras in this video, but it's going to be unscripted. I'm going to talk a lot about my life and what has changed since I originally purchased the Stormtrooper version of the Red Komodo in 2020 till now in summer of 2024, where I've made a lot of differences in my life, especially when it comes to career paths, all related to video, but much different than what I originally intended on doing. So just be aware that going through this video, it's not going to be a complete camera-y video. I'm going to talk about kind of the state of me, of Jeff Fagien here on this channel. It's kind of weird saying it like that. But I just want to be real with all of you guys, let you know where I'm at, and kind of hear from you. What do you think about this situation? When I bought the Red Komodo, I was getting really heavily into narrative filmmaking. I was traveling a lot between Atlanta and here in South Florida prior to the pandemic, and then I started doing that a lot after the pandemic hit. Having a camera like the Red Komodo made a lot of sense because a lot of productions in Atlanta were using Red cameras. So it was easy to make a gear rental having the Red Komodo, and I was operating it anyways, sometimes as a camera operator, sometimes as a director of photography. It really just depended on the level of the project. I definitely got my use out of it when I at least first got the camera. But let's start off on my history. So I was always into video when I was a kid. I made Star Wars fan films. When there was a game called Star Wars Galaxies where I used to make animated adventures because it was in the Star Wars universe. It was an easy way to kind of screen capture and make videos. And then in 2008, I got really into wakeboarding and I became a wakeboarding videographer because quite honestly, I was very amateur at wakeboarding. I was nowhere near the professional level, but a lot of my friends for years were professional and world champions at that sport from many different countries, not just here, from England, Israel, Germany, and we were all hanging out together all the time from high school and even in college. And I was hanging out with them at all the events, so video just made a lot of sense. It gave me a purpose at a lot of these events, and I ended up becoming one of the biggest names in the sport for wakeboarding videography, but it's a relatively small sport. As I did wakeboarding, I grew a huge appreciation for video, and I understood that video was kind of going to be the future of where everything was at, especially for marketing. It just wasn't quite there yet at the time in 2008, 2009. We didn't have, Red Komodos or Blackmagic cameras at that time. We had more camcorders. The DSLR revolution was only just starting, and it was a different time because you couldn't get 10-bit in those cameras where you could in camcorders. It was just a big ordeal. But so I started in action sports, and then I ended up going to film school after action sports because I realized I learned a lot of things the wrong way, but I got to do a lot of really cool stuff. I realized I wanted to get more into learning the actual science behind filmmaking because I never learned things the proper way. And I wanted to learn filmmaking because I kind of had this feeling that in the far future, I would use the skills that I learned from filmmaking, video in general, to advance whatever company I was working for that maybe I owned or I was running at the time. And I didn't know what that company would be. I kind of had a feeling that it would be where I'm at now, but we'll get to that later in the video. So I went to film school. I ended up not graduating because I didn't want to use all of my credits at the school I was at FAU in order to graduate with a film degree. I wanted to get a business degree. Long story short there is I was able to convert those credits and graduate with a business degree using all of my film school credits, which is pretty cool. But then I started getting into the music side of things after film school. I did a lot of EPKs. I worked at Jazz's Nightlife. Originally, it was a jazz club that I started doing more of the video and tech side, and then I ended up becoming a manager and not abandoning the video, but doing less of it because I was managing all the time. And I started doing commercials and documentary type work on the side. I still did some of my wakeboarding stuff because of that legacy and that sport, I would basically do product catalog videos on the side while I was working at the club. And then when the club closed in 2015, it was like mid 2015, I went back fully into video. I got really heavily into documentary video. I came out with a wakeboarding movie at the time that was like part documentary, part action sports movie. And that's when I transitioned. I was using Blackmagics up to that point. And then in mid 2015, I got the GH4 and kind of went full in on the GH4. And I was very documentary, action sports, corporate work focused up until really 2018. And then in 2018, the Blackmagic 4K came out, and then I started getting more into the narrative side of things more and more every year. And I kind of started leaving the documentary and action sports stuff behind me. Now, there's a lot that happened in between, but I'm trying to really just condense everything. So fast forward, it's 2020. I've been using Blackmagics for a while. I end up picking up the Komodo because of what I said earlier in the video. I was just in Atlanta a lot more. It made a lot more sense to have this and rent it out and also have it as my camera that I use on set. But then something happened when I was in Atlanta, and it kind of changed my perspective on the film industry. Just me personally, this isn't something for everybody. Essentially, I was on a shoot for a narrative project, and we ended up losing footage from one of the Red cameras we were using. It wasn't a Komodo. It was one of an older DSMC2 model. The card just stopped working. It didn't record anything, and the long story short, the DIT flagged it. We tried to see if we could recover it or if it was on a different card, but that card just fried. It wasn't good anymore. As the DIT and I brought this to the producers and the first AD, they basically said, look, we can't deal with this right now. Don't say anything because we need to finish the day. And I really didn't think much of it. I wanted to follow the chain of command. After that shoot, I was brought on to do more work with that production company, but then they found out in a very different story of what happened with that lost footage. And apparently the first AD and one of the producers just said that I never told them about the lost footage and they didn't know until after the day was over. And the problem that everyone had was that lost footage made a really big problem with that production because we lost a lot of scenes that we wrapped early that day. We could have unfortunately stayed later and just reshot some of that stuff while the actors were there. But they changed their story because they wanted to wrap early that day, at least in my opinion. And they blamed it on me because they knew I was from Florida. They knew my story, that I was, going up and back, and that I wasn't really an Atlanta native. And I guess they thought maybe they wouldn't ever see me again or work with me again. So they just changed the story. And obviously I got brought on to that production. I told them my side of the story. It made a lot of sense. Basically, the first AD and the producer owned up to it. And I still had to work with them after that. And I was always very nice, but I obviously wasn't very happy about it. The first AD, I'm not going to name names, but she ended up kind of leaving the behind the camera stuff and is now acting. And she's been in some pretty high profile stuff as like a minor supporting actor. And look, I'm happy for her that she's growing her acting career as a behind the camera person. Other than that one interaction with her blaming me, I obviously wasn't too happy. It left a bad taste in my mouth. And she was working with a lot of people around town. A lot of people kind of knew of the situation. And it kind of soured my opinion towards working, at least in the Atlanta film industry. So I kind of slowed down on that front. That's when I ended up picking a job working for Grant Cardone. And I started doing the social media stuff there. And working there kind of showed me where I can go as a content creator and not just as a DP or a videographer. Because kind of like I was touching on in the beginning of the video, my intent was not to always be a director of photography. My intent was to learn video, to be able to do video really well for whatever company I worked on down the line that maybe I owned, whatever. We're almost there. I worked at Cardone for a bit. I got reintroduced to the new modern version of mirrorless cameras with the FX3s they had there. And then that kind of brought me into the modern world of mirrorless. I started doing more corporate work and less narrative work. Started using a lot more Canon and Sony mirrorless. I transitioned almost completely to Canon, then from Canon to Sony. And now I still have some Sony, and I've got this Blackmagic, and I've got the Red. And I sold my Red in 2023 last year because I came to the realization I wasn't going to be using it as much. And I also could use the money for other things that came up at the time, especially because I wasn't using it as much. And then earlier this year in 2024, I ended up picking up another Komodo, the black one. And that was a mission in itself. I ended up getting it, and there was an issue with the battery where it just sometimes, long story short, it just wasn't working properly. The power board was wrong. Something was wrong with it, but it got fixed under warranty. But I got the camera back again, and it came back, with minor scratches all over it, which kind of happened with my first white camera, which was a complaint I had from service where I just don't understand how you send the camera in, get service, get scratched, but whatever. That's not why I'm kind of here to this decision to get rid of this camera. Where I'm at is after me transitioning to doing more corporate stuff, doing a lot more content creation stuff, not just for this channel, but for other channels I work for and other local people who just need help to do content creation. It's, content creation's pretty big right now. So I started doing that. And then I had this opportunity to become one of the publishers at Jazz's magazine that I've worked loosely for throughout the years. But now we're in a position to where year over year, I started taking on more responsibility, and I started doing less production work and less corporate work and documentary work. And I started doing more YouTube content creation for Jazz, for myself, still for some other clients, but I'm really more on the content creation side of things. And it really picked up about a month after I purchased this Komodo for the second time. Now, I love the Red Komodo. This is kind of where we're going to get into the analytics side, where I love the shape of this on the weddings that I've shot. Again, something I skipped over in the video, but in 2022, 2023, I was doing a lot of weddings, and I was shooting most of them on the Red Komodo. And I was even shooting them in anamorphic, with cheap anamorphic lenses, not even really expensive ones. And I just loved the look I was getting out of it. And still to even right now, it's why I'm not completely sold on necessarily getting rid of it. But there's a few things, the startup time kind of stinks on this camera, but it is what it is. I just leave it on a lot. The form factor is great on this camera, but at this point, it's now 4 years old. It uses CFast 2.0 cards. CF Express A and B are kind of where everyone's at right now. My Sony FX30 uses the CF-A. Blackmagic uses the CF-B card. They are faster. They're a lot cheaper than CF Express 2.0. So they make a lot of sense. And then we have the Blackmagic right here. A big difference between the Komodo and the Blackmagic is the Komodo is a Super 35 sensor, although a really big Super 35 sensor. And the Blackmagic is a full frame sensor that can shoot open gate with very similar realistic dynamic range to the Komodo. I wouldn't say it's exactly the same, but I would say it's pretty darn close, and the color science on the Blackmagic is great. Then they did this Blackmagic sale, which is why I bought this camera. I never intended to buy this camera, but then they did the sale, and it was so cheap, I couldn't not go for it. I mean, it's got a full frame 6K sensor. I don't really need the slow motion, and it doesn't really have amazing slow motion in 6K, but it's got built-in XLR support. I'm using an XLR microphone right here, where the Komodo doesn't. It's part of the reason I was using the FX30 for so long for YouTube and documentary type stuff. It has HDMI. It ticked off a lot of boxes for my studio camera and a secondary camera to the Komodo when I want to use it on gigs. That the FX30 just didn't do, especially because the RAW on the FX30, you can only shoot ProRes RAW. You have to use an external monitor like the Atomos Ninja V to get ProRes RAW, which doesn't work in DaVinci. I have to transcode it, where the Blackmagic has B-RAW, which is pretty solid. There's just a lot of things that the Blackmagic does. And then I've also come to this realization where when I picked up this second Komodo, it was because I didn't know if I was going to go full in on Jazz, and to jump a little bit forward, now we're working on a TV show here at Jazz, but I'm producing the show. I'm not working for somebody else. I'm producing, I'm directing, I'm basically DPing, I'm one of the camera ops. I'm making a lot of the camera choices. And I bought this Komodo to have, for special projects and when I'm going to work for other people. And I'm just not really doing that right now. Things have changed in a few months. I guess it's been almost 4 months since I bought this. And the direction of my life has changed a lot. So now I came to the realization when I was talking to Josh Satin the other day, where I'm the one who makes the decision on cameras. We were talking about Netflix approved, and I won't get into that. I'm going to do a video with Drew from Craft Show on that at some point. But we're talking about Netflix approved and how some people buy cameras because they've got like the Netflix approval. And I think that's a load of BS for the most part. I think it's more a marketing gimmick than anything. I bought this again to kind of have as a camera with me to use as a rental, to have a higher rate, quite frankly, on shoots that I'm either DPing or camera opping. But I'm not doing that now. I can make my own decision on what cameras I want to use because I'm in charge of this production coming up. And I really like the Blackmagic, especially once I bought the EVF for it and the battery grip. Although this becomes a huge camera, it's got a built-in monitor, a built-in 5-inch monitor at that. That's pretty solid. The EVF is pretty close to the body. It's not kind of sticking out all over the place. So I can stick this camera in a bag really easily. A lot of things that you have to add on to the Komodo, especially when it comes to a monitor. You got to add on a monitor to this. EVF, of course, you got to add on the EVF. It's not going to be as compact as on the Blackmagic. But you don't have the same color science, obviously, but with color grading, we can get them pretty close together. So now it becomes an issue of, I have this Red Komodo, and I'm using, quite frankly, now that I got this Blackmagic, the Blackmagic way more, and the FX30 way more than the Komodo. So I've come to a place where I'm going to film this show and we're going to use the Komodo. The Komodo is going to be the A cam, the Blackmagic's going to be the B cam, and the FX30 is probably going to be an extra cam that I give to, camera operators or whatever to have the third wherever we need it be. But we'll shoot it with those 3 cameras because that's what I have. And quite frankly, I'm in charge. I'm the one who's going to have to deal with the color correcting in post, so I'm fine with that. But I want to see how all these cameras work together on this show. It's going to be a pilot episode. I don't want to get too much into it other than I'll let you know it has to do with music. It's going to be under the SIII banner. We've already contacted all the major players involved, and we set a date to shoot it in August. So I plan on using the Komodo for it, and this is going to kind of be the final make or break project, whether I keep the Komodo or just decide to go all in on the Blackmagic. I'll probably keep my FX30 because that camera is relatively cheap. But the only reason I get rid of the Red is, other than me liking the camera and me using it as a gimbal camera, I don't know where it fits within my ecosystem anymore, since I'm not really freelancing. I'm going to be, any of these shows that I do are going to be under the SIII banner, and I'm going to decide what the cameras are, and I don't need my cameras to be Red cameras. I don't need global shutter, which, again, another big thing between this and the Blackmagic. The Blackmagic has a traditional CMOS sensor, and it's got terrible rolling shutter. But for what I'm filming, that really isn't an issue. I'm not shooting fast-moving objects right now. Global shutter is obviously great for that. A lot of the pros of the Komodo, I just don't necessarily need. And then there is the looming fact of Red has been sold to Nikon. And quite frankly, it's not going to be the same company moving forward. Are the cameras going to be the same? Absolutely. Is the service going to be the same? Probably. I mean, my service experience was the same, unfortunately, that it was now as it was a few years ago when I sent my camera in for service. But with Red, there's kind of this energy that's been behind them for years because they were more of an indie company in a way, especially with Jared Land behind them. There was a lot more of a personal connection to the company that it's very apparent that personal connection is gone, quite frankly, with Red. And that doesn't make their cameras any worse, but some of that connection, I think, is why a lot of users liked being part of the Red ecosystem, because you were able to easily talk to people higher up in the company and make your voice be heard, where that doesn't really seem like that's going to be something moving forward. And to be fair and honest with you all, that's part of behind why I got the Komodo, because I liked being able to talk with these guys and kind of tell them what I was thinking, get things fixed sometimes when they couldn't get fixed easily through service, kind of speak to who I needed to get shit done, quite honestly. I know this is controversial, and this is just my opinion, but I feel like it's not going to be the same company moving forward. Quite frankly, owning a Red, it isn't about being part of that club anymore. That club really doesn't exist other than people who are really big fans of Red, fanboys, you may say. Those still exist, but as far as the company culture, it doesn't seem like it's there anymore. So you really buy a Red because you need what the Red offers. And I think I'm at a point where there are other cameras that kind of do the job better for what I need in my situation. And as I said, this video, it's not making definite statements of I'm getting rid of my Red for the Blackmagic. It's about, should I get rid of my Red for the Blackmagic? And right now, I don't have that answer. There's a lot of questions I have that I'm kind of putting out here in this video and things that I've been thinking about. I can't wait to put this on the production with the Blackmagic camera because I really do love both of these cameras, and the Komodo is obviously a much better gimbal camera than the Blackmagic is, and it's, hate to say it, probably a much better gimbal camera than the Pixis is going to end up being, because the Pixis is much larger than this Komodo. I'll update you all when I get to that point. As I said, this video wasn't going to be like a whole gear thing. This is kind of like the state of me and where my life has gone and my trajectory in filmmaking. And now I'm at a point where I'm using video to help grow Jazziz as a company and help grow other creators as well. And content creation went to a place that I never really anticipated it going. And I never saw myself going from, videographer to documentary filmmaker to director of photography to content creator. But that's kind of how things went. And I've learned a lot along the way. And I see a lot of positive changes I could do to these companies that I definitely wouldn't have been able to come in with such expertise if I didn't take that route of doing, action sports and documentary and corporate and music and wedding cinema and filmmaking, narrative filmmaking. I learned so much through all of those different paths. I am a student of video. It's why, I've done real estate. I've done a lot of weddings. I've done all these different sectors of video because I'm a student of video. I've even worked with some of the biggest people in all the different industries, the biggest wedding video guy, documentary people, real estate guys, narrative. I've learned a lot from a lot of the greats, and I appreciate everything that I've been taught as a student of film to be able to take everything I've learned and apply it to this new job. So that all being said, moving forward, for the most part, it looks like I'll be doing video production, content creation for Jazziz and some of my other smaller clients that I have. And of course, this channel. We'll be talking a lot about gear and maybe some of the business aspects, but definitely we'll be sticking here with mostly gear, talking about the latest and greatest in filmmaking, because every camera, including a Komodo, even though I think the Komodo is definitely best suited more on the narrative side, there are people in every sector, like weddings, documentaries, action sports, whatever. Every sector could have a use for a camera like this, but a different use, and different accessories, different, the way they handle the camera different. And that's kind of why I love talking about cameras on this channel, because there really isn't just one perspective of camera gear and how to use your camera and filmmaking that's right. Everyone kind of has their own methods that apply really great to the sector of video they're in. That being said, I know a lot of people who make absolute statements that are in certain sectors of video who say, this is absolutely the way you have to do this, or the way you have to do this, or what you need for this, or what you need for that. But they're not thinking larger. They're thinking about their sector of video and how it affects them, where video is just so much larger than just narrative or wedding or whatever. There's just so many sectors. I like to, at this point in my life, speak a lot more broadly to what this could be used for in my experience. And that's kind of what my videos here are going to be moving forward, talking about camera gear and what I think, in my opinion, on working in various sectors of video, how they would work, what's better for what. And I hope you all can enjoy my, take on things, my experience, my opinions, and then let me know what you think. So that all being said, I know this is kind of a deep video, definitely deeper than I've gone on the channel, but if you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. If you got knowledge and value out of today's video, please make sure to hit that like, subscribe, and notification bell to keep up to date with the latest videos on the channel. And until next time, as always, my name is Jeff Fagien. Thank you for joining me, and I will catch you in the next video. See you later.